Hello everybody, Albert here. Thank you for watching. I thought I'd kick off a series on the topic of creativity and design by offering you 4 ways that you can be more creative. Number 1 is in response to, occasionally I'll meet a new person and they'll ask me what I do, and I tell them I'm an architect. And they'll often say, oh, I wanted to be an architect. And then they'll say one of 2 things. Oh, but I couldn't draw well. Or they might say something like, but I'm not creative. And so in response to that feeling that I think a lot of people have, I would offer that everyone is creative and equally creative. The issue is not that, it's about what it is that everyone is creating. It could either be this sort of novel thing that we call creativity, or it can be the status quo thing that we call what we've got. And the status quo thing really comes from our upbringing, from training, how we should act, what we should do for a living, that sort of thing. And so to that, for number 1, I would say stop acting like a grown-up. Be like a child. Dream. Don't imagine that there are limitations. Anything is possible. And if you have that sort of attitude, really anything could be possible. Number 2, put judgment in its place. Judgment is something that we all deal with on all fronts, but as a creative professional, we deal with it both from ourselves, the little voice in our heads, but also from clients and the outside world. And you have to take that really with a grain of salt, because the idea of good or bad is entirely relative. In another video, I'll talk about the ego and how that relates to this idea of good or bad being relative. But for now, I would say just take those kind of judgments about good or bad with a grain of salt, because there is no absolute, and no one actually has the authority to determine absolute good or bad. Number 3, understand from where creativity comes. So if you can imagine yourself going back to the beginning of time and the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang, and just go a little bit before that, 1 second before that, how big was the universe? Well, scientists speculate that it was smaller than a pea, in fact, infinitely small, and it was pure energy and pure potentiality, really, of what the universe would be after that 1 second. And in that inheritance that we all share, that pea-size or smaller core, that is really where creativity comes. It's infinite potential that I believe is within all of us. And so, in response also to my earlier statement about people thinking that they don't have creativity in them, I think they do, and you do. It's really in all of us. And again, it's not about that potential existing or not existing. It's about where it's applied. Lastly, number 4, filter out the static and listen. We're bombarded with thoughts. It's very hard not to think. In fact, impossible not to think. But I would offer that a good way to generate ideas is not to think about them in terms of moving mountains or an immense force of will. It's really about listening and catching ideas from that quiet space. Imagine a quiet space between words, a quiet space in the background of an empty room. That is really the space from which ideas appear without really that much effort. Sometimes they're good, sometimes you reject them, but they're the source of ultimately what's good enough that progresses what you want to do, your creative work. So I hope you find that interesting. If you find this topic interesting, please do subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.